Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Tuesday show. This is going to be the very last episode of the WWF LJN Wrestling Superstars. This is going to be the prototype and variant show. Now, technically, this is the episode that should have aired after Series 6, but because I wanted to wait and hold off so that the last set of figures that I was waiting on to arrive, I could include in this episode. Unfortunately, those set of figures I was waiting on never did come in. So, like I've been saying over the last few weeks, I wanted to give as much time for that to come in. If they didn't arrive on time, so be it. I will just go off of what I have on hand. So, what I'm going to end up doing, I'm going to record this video on my cell phone. I expect this to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about an hour 20, maybe even an hour and a half, maybe even longer than that. So, hopefully there's enough time on the cell phone where I can actually get the whole video in. But I want to record on the cell phone because I want to, hopefully through the YouTube studios, be able to incorporate photographs so that any of the prototypes that I don't have, such as like Coco Beware, for example, I can incorporate the original prototype design of that figure. So when I show the Coco Beware figure that LJN came out with in Series 5, I'll have the photograph, displayed on the screen for you guys, so you can see the original blue pants compared to what the red pants that they originally, or that came out with in Series 5 back in 1988, etc. Right? So, I was going to start off with all prototypes first, and then kind of move on with the variants afterwards. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kind of mix and match as we go through. So I'm going to keep these kind of like in sequential order. So as we start off with Series 1 and kind of move our way through. So if like Ricky Steamboat is Series 3 and Ricky Steamboat had an original prototype, I'm going to wait till we get to Series 3 before looking at that original prototype and kind of look at what the prototype was compared to what was released, right? So we're going to kind of look at it in that capacity. Now, some figures that didn't have any original characters in the LJN line, such as Killer Khan, these prototypes we will take a look at before we begin this actual video. So any characters, again, that weren't part of the LJN line, yes, we will look at the prototypes first. Now, I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 real prototypes of Killer Khan out on the actual market. If you own an original prototype of Killer Khan, that guy is probably worth thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And I think it actually has like 1 of 4 or something like stamped on the bottom. So one of the original designers who worked for LJN, I think he actually molded those figures and what have you. And I think because it was actually made out of clay, it's very fragile, comes apart, whatnot. But there are customizers out there who take the original design of the original creation of Killer Khan, and you can actually purchase your own prototype, custom prototype of Killer Khan. But this is one of those original figures that were planned for LJN back in the 1980s. And he does come with his own accessory. So Killer Khan, I think he's supposed to be based on like Genghis Khan, obviously. So here's the thing. This guy was like what? Close to 7 feet tall, 350 pounds. This guy was massive. He was like a big threat to Andre the Giant. So where was he? I think he was a Japanese wrestler. Was he Chinese or Japanese? So Genghis Khan, I think, was Chinese. And I think Genghis Khan was Chinese. And I think Killer Khan was a Japanese wrestler. So, I mean, that part didn't fit. This is just resin. Now, this part, I mean, this is a rubber figure. but like this isn't rubber. This doesn't bend, so this doesn't really sit on his head at all. But I just kind of situate the hat inside his, how did I have it? Inside his hand, and it just displays like so. So the Raider Nation on eBay. Oh, that sucks. I bought this figure from the Raider Nation. A lot of my figures, a lot of my customs, I get from them over there, and highly recommend. Kevin Pelkey, you look him up on Facebook. You know, they obviously they team with Random Treasures over on Etsy, so you can get your resin figure from Kevin Pelkey, or you can look up the Raider Nation on eBay, and you know, that's another great source if you're looking for great customs. You know, again, you know, rubber figure. This one, again, sometimes you might get like a resin rubber hybrid, but I mean, they're not crazy expensive. I mean, I think this one was like $75, $85, something like that. So, you know, very affordable and a great piece to add for the collection if you wanted, you know, a prototype for your collection. So, another awesome piece for the collection, Killer Khan. And I looked him up. He just died in 23, so he was like in his 70s. So that was pretty nice to see that he lived a long life. Another character that didn't get an original release in the LJN family. He actually would have come out in 1984 with the rest of Series 1. But because he actually left WWF in 1984, and he actually signed on with Hasbro. And we all know the story, right? So this particular character, he signed on with Hasbro. He had this all-American soldier, you know, gimmick. And he signed on with G.I. Joe. And he had this cartoon, comics, toy line, the works. So his action figure with LJN in Series 1 was scrapped. But couple years ago, Matt Cardona and the Big Rubber guys from Major Bendy's did release that exact figure, or at least probably 90 to 95% duplicate replica of the original design of that Sergeant Slaughter that did come out, right? So the Sergeant Slaughter that would have come out with LJN back in Series 1. This is basically what you would have gotten. And in fact, this isn't... I'll use this as an example because this is loose. But this is what Matt Cardona and Big Rubber guys came out with, the G.I. Joe. This is just their re-release. But this is basically what they would have come out with. The Sergeant Slaughter, obviously in camo gear, but I think it's a terrible pose, horrible pose. But he's kind of giving you, you know, he's trying to give you a salute, right? I don't know why the hand is up like so. Because even with a drill sergeant hat, you know, you don't salute, you know, with your eyebrow, with the drill sergeant hat on, beret, or well, with the beret you still salute with your finger to your eyebrow, right? So now with the drill sergeant hat on, you would salute with your finger like right at the tip of your hat, like right up here. So you'd be like so. I don't know why his hand is like right up like that. That's stupid. that is horrible. But he does have, you know, movable pieces, right? Like removable sunglasses and all that. But anyways, back to the figure itself. Forget about the design. Again, removable sunglasses. I think that the whistle removes as well. So what is it? Almost 40 years later, Big Rubber Guys gave you the Sergeant Slaughter that LJN was planning back in 1984. So, but from 1985 to 1990, you know, G.I. Joe had a bunch of mail-away Sergeant Slaughter figures and, you know, a bunch of, you know, G.I. Joe figures in general. In 1987, with the Real American magazine, I believe it was the fall 1987 Real American magazine, G.I. Joe. There was this beautiful back cover that shows G.I. Joe, and if I can find it, which I'll right here, if I can include that picture, I will insert the clip with G.I. Joe kind of like stuffing his foot on the throat of Hulk Hogan, LJN. You know, back at a time when companies didn't really mind incorporating other businesses in with their advertisements, which was pretty awesome, right? So 1987, Hasbro released their own LJN style action figure. You know, Hasbro owned G.I. Joe, right? So this is not LJN. This is G.I. Joe. But a lot of people classify the Sergeant Slaughter figure as LJN because he is LJN style. He is LJN size. In all honesty, if I were to look at this and say this is LJN, don't call it Hasbro, it's LJN in my eyes. If I were to say that, this would probably be the greatest LJN figure. Not Hulk Hogan, not Ultimate Warrior, Andre the Giant Big Judge. No, this to me is the greatest LJN figure ever made, if that's the case. Perfect fighting pose, stance, design, look, this is fantastic. I remember a buddy of mine, when he took the Nikolai Volkov figure and he repainted it, you know, shaved off the head, give him that balding spot and everything, and he made it into Sergeant Slaughter. He's like, oh my god, yeah, we don't have that shitty Sergeant Slaughter, and you took Nikolai Volkov and made him look like the real Sergeant Slaughter. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, don't get me wrong. That Nikolai Volkov that, you know, he repainted to look like Sergeant Slaughter was fantastic. I loved it a lot. But come on, you're calling this shitty? Are you insane? This is one of the greatest figures ever. Absolutely freaking love the Hasbro Sergeant Slaughter mail away, okay? Not LJN, Hasbro, but incredible piece. If you don't want to shell out $400, $500, $600 for a mail away Sergeant Slaughter Hasbro figure, Etsy. Go to Random Treasures. You know, get yourself a mint figure. Use their Thank You 10 promotional code. Save yourself 10% for around $125, $130 after the discount. Get yourself a painted code from Random Treasures. And, you know, you get yourself a perfect figure. So those were a couple of prototypes that, you know, LJN was considering with Killer Khan and Sergeant Slaughter, of course. So let's move on to Series 1. Another prototype that was in the works, Roddy Piper. We've seen Roddy Piper in magazines featuring a Puma on the t-shirt. Same exact figure, but the only difference was Puma with the stencil on the shirt. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends on your perception, maybe he could have gotten some different variants. Unfortunately, there were no additional variants of this nature, so no Puma on the shirt. All you ever got was Hot Rod. So technically, yes, Puma on the shirt, Roddy Piper was technically one of their Series 1 prototypes. So Series 1 Roddy Piper prototype. From the original line, your Roddy Piper variants. The only difference between your two Roddy Pipers that were released in LJN, the boots. One is a bright red boot, where the other one is sort of a dark red or almost brown in color, shade of red boot. So dark red, almost brown, bright red. Your two variations of boot color. And only psychopaths like myself care about variants and will go the extra mile and pay extra money for something like that. But literally, that's it. I mean, Roddy Piper's not an expensive figure. I mean, it sucks. He's like a $3 to $5 figure, right? And sometimes you see that dark red boots, and it's like something that you don't value any more than $3 on, and you're like, now you're paying $20, $30, $25, $35 for a Roddy Piper, plus probably another $10 in shipping. You're paying probably close to $50 for something that you think is like if you're trying to sell a Roddy Piper on eBay, put them up for like $7 shipping. Maybe if you're lucky, maybe if you do like a 99-cent auction, maybe you get a few bids. Maybe you sell them for like $2 1/4. So it's like it's frustrating. But no, Roddy Piper is not an expensive figure. So like literally, you're buying him only for the variant, and it's a pain in the ass, guys. But it's fun to have it for these videos, man. It's so awesome to be able to kind of like showcase it for these videos, so that, you know, when I go back and watch them, or when you guys watch these videos, you know, we all can enjoy it, get a kick out of it, right? Moving on with the next prototype here in Series 1. And where did I drop it? Here we go. Series 1 prototype of Hillbilly Jim. So, on the back of the card backing, we got Hillbilly Jim with a black t-shirt. And pretty much, even as the series went on, throughout the card backs, you always get Hillbilly Jim with black shirt. Right? So, and I gotta actually check on that. Am I wrong? I want to double check that, because I want to verify. Nope. I did not misspeak. I wanted to make sure I didn't misspeak, because even in Series 1, right, when they released Hillbilly Jim with red shirt, in Series 1, they released the figure in 85. Late 84, early 85, when Series 1 released this figure. 86 rolled around, 87, 88. Whenever later series came out, whenever new figures came out, they already had a red shirt Hillbilly Jim. Why were they still promoting or advertising a black shirt Hillbilly Jim on the back of the card? I mean, really, was it that difficult to alter? Couldn't they like digitally change it in Photoshop or something? I mean, was Photoshop even a thing back then? I mean, I have to assume it wasn't that difficult or that expensive to alter new card backing when they came out with new series. But your original prototype of Hillbilly Jim, and of course what you got on either 2-pack with Hulk Hogan or on single card. All right. Sticking with Series 1, not any prototypes, but variants. And we've got multiple variants of Junkyard Dog. And the most common Junkyard Dog is Junkyard Dog with silver chain. So, the silver chain, like I said, is the most common Junkyard Dog action figure. You also get Junkyard Dog with black chain. And I don't know why I can never get this damn thing open to put it around his neck, but Junkyard Dog with black chain, which I think is probably the most rare of all of the chains. Most rare, probably most expensive. The black chain variant. And then Junkyard Dog with red chain. Which I like the most because it's the most flashy, it sticks out the most. And of course it matches his pants, right? So, makes sense. So, man, a few weeks ago I watched this video and oh man, I'm gonna have to find that video, and hopefully before the video posts I can find the video and attach the link if you guys are interested. But someone sat down with one of the actual designers of the action figures from LJN, right? And they were asking about just that, like, why were there 3 different chains for Junkyard Dog? And they have no idea why. Like, why did they put 3 different designs on the chain? That wasn't intentional. They didn't request 3 different colors. The designer, he had no idea why they did that. You know, why they did it at the factory. Maybe they ran out of materials. Maybe they ran out of paint or something. That's the only thing that they could come up with. So, that was kind of like... So, a lot of these paint changes, when you see stuff like that, none of that stuff is intentional. Stuff like Jesse Ventura and SD Jones, they didn't say, hey, we want variants. None of that stuff was done on purpose. It's very simple. We don't have the materials available. So it's kind of stupid, but you would think that they would have like fired them and moved their contract somewhere else, but all right. So I pulled out one of my spares on this one because the other Valentine I had the championship belt around his waist, so I wanted to be able to show off this particular one because I wanted to showcase Greg Valentine variant with belly button, right? So Greg Valentine with belly button, very common figure. But then you also got Greg Valentine without belly button. With and without belly button, the 2 Greg Valentine variants. Now, I was thinking about pulling down Bruce Beefcake because the Bruce Beefcake, when we did the Series 2 review, I was looking at his figures, if you guys recall, and you know, the 2 pants, the color looks different, and the spots, there weren't as many spots on one figure than there was on another. But simply, I just think that the spots had more to do with play wear over time than anything else. So I decided not to bring down the Bruce figures. I don't think that was so much variations. I just think that was play wear. But something like this is legitimate variations to the figures. So Greg Valentine starts Series 2. Series 2 George Steele. I don't have a George Steele custom, so I don't have George Steele with chest hair. You would think that would be like one of the most primary customs or prototypes I would have, but I just never picked one up. I've had opportunities, I just always passed on it. But we all know what the George Steele figure is, with the painted chest hair. And I'll probably throw in a photograph right here to kind of show you the George Steele with chest hair. Alright, so that was Series 2. Moving on to Series 3. With the variants of Bobby Heenan. And the biggest difference with Bobby Heenan are scrolls on the shoulders. So, that little design. And oddly enough, you would think that with scrolls, with that extra design, that the extra design would give it more of more value to the figure. No. More design does not equal more value. This is actually a more common figure and less valuable. Without scrolls, less common, more valuable. So $20 figure, $10 even. $20, $30, $40, depending on who you're getting it from. I always say, what's the number one thing I always say in my videos? It's not even about condition most of the time anymore. It's about seller. This could be 100% mint right out of the package, no deficiencies. If I'm selling it, maybe I get 20 bucks for it. Let's say someone like Mabel Toys. Because Andrew, awesome seller, one of my favorite sellers. I brag about him all the time, right? If he's got like over 1,000 followers, the figure could be like massive paint loss, and he could have like $15 shipping with a starting bid of like $40, and that darn thing could sell for like $125. So it depends on who's selling the item. If you have more more eyes on your product, yeah, people are gonna, obviously there's more eyes on it, more people are gonna bid on it, right? So, but point I'm making is no scrolls, more valuable. I've always been fascinated by the fact that the managers always seem to have some of the best figures. You know, if I was a kid and I had LJNs when I was young, I mean, outside of Elizabeth and maybe Mean Gene Okerlund, I mean, I don't really think I could have gotten much play out of those. But majority of the managers, though, I mean, they all have freaking awesome play poses. I mean, with Bobby Heenan and Freddie Blassie and Mr. Fuji, I mean, Lou Albano. I could start a core of managers, and those guys could all be like champions, man. Those guys are like all freaking awesome playable figures. Speaking of Lou Albano, one of the best figures of the whole darn line. The variants of Lou Albano, both with red on the shirt and without red on the shirt. So, yes, every time I look at this figure, it makes me mad. I made 34 cents selling Lou Albano one time. It's like, damn, Matthew, how many times are you going to complain about that? I don't know. Every time I look at this figure, that's all I could think about. When you buy it, you probably pay like $20, $25, and then I mean, I didn't obviously buy it by itself. I probably bought it among a group of figures, right? So it's not like I went out and bought the figure for like 20 bucks and then resold it for 20 cents. you know, net sale 20 cents. But that's what that's what I think about. That's where my mind goes, because I have OCD and I'm crazy. Little Bano. I mean, take away the little small stocky legs. I mean, this is practically a perfect figure. Little Bano, I'd say, is about a $20 figure. With red, without red, probably double the price, maybe even $50. I know when I got the red shirt, MOC was probably $80 MOC, $100 maybe. So you have to imagine that just plain white was probably around $150. So, I mean, obviously the all white was a much more rare figure. And you guys know how I feel about the big, freaking bulky, heavy figures. Love them, so I will always pay up more for the big, heavier guys. All right. Variants Series 3. Series 3 continues. And which one is this? Looking for... Alright, so this is the plain. Variants continue into Series 3 with the Kirchners. And this one is double. So, with plain, clean-shaven Corporal Kirchner, about a $10 figure, right? And stubble version, about a $20 figure. And then bearded Kirchner, which is like a $500 figure. The reason I want you guys to go back and watch that interview from the video I was talking about earlier, when the representative from LJN, when he was talking about the Kirchners, funny story about it is, this was the original design. This was the Corporal Kirchner that LJN wanted. They wanted the stub. They wanted the bearded Kirchner. But I guess the factory had such a difficult time applying the stubble and getting the paint on that it was too difficult or too hard of a process for them. So they eventually abandoned ship and just went with just a clean shaven version. So when the interviewer was kind of talking to the representative from LJN, he's like, I thought that the bearded was like the most common Corporal Kirchner figure, and I would have, this is him saying, I would have thought that the stubble version was the most rare, most expensive figure. I'm like, and then the guy was kind of looking at him like, are you crazy? So, and in reality, it's like, no. But that's crazy, man. To think of how things have changed over time. Yeah, you find yourself a pretty beat up Corporal Kirchner with beard, loose. You're still in the $300 to $500 neighborhood. $200 plus. I mean, depending on how bad. I think the one that I bought with like pushed in nose, I think I still got it for like $2 something at least. So, I mean, I didn't bring down that original. Like this one here, I got from Ram Treasures back in the day. I think it was an original figure. They just repainted it, but I pulled this one off because it's perfect. So I'm like, yeah. The one that's original, like I said, it had a little bit of paint loss, and the pushed in nose, I'm like, yeah, forget it. But the clean shaven version, and then the stubble version, which you could probably won't even be able to make out on camera, or maybe you will, I don't know. But the fact that you couldn't get, or is that, hold on a minute. Oh, I'm stupid. This is the stubble version. Yeah. Now you could definitely make it out. I'm over there showing you the clean version. Yeah. You can see the stubble on his face there. Stubble has the bronze belt. But anyways, those are the Corporal Kirchner variants. Like, really? How many of the worst, or one of the worst LJN figures in the world do you need? But variants of Jesse Ventura. And here's the thing, when it comes to Jesse Ventura, he doesn't even have a legitimate variant. Not really. There wasn't a legitimate, realistic variant of Jesse Ventura made. So I'll use these two figures first as an example. All right, so, you know, blonde hair, Jesse Ventura, right? Blonde hair. I think this one might be sort of purple glasses, maybe. I think this one might be sort of pink. So maybe that's a variation, possibly. But, you know, my eyes just could be different. But, I mean, you could say that's purple. Maybe that's pink. Maybe. But that's not even what stood out to me. I kept these two figures because look at the pants. This is a very bright, you know, bright pink pants. And this is a much darker shade of pink pants. That's why I decided to keep both of these particular figures. Is because the shade of difference of pant color. Literally, that's it. Now, when it comes to this variant, hell, this one's probably even darker than these other two. Yeah, look at this. This one's probably even darker than the first one. But that's not even why I kept that one. Now, where these are like legitimate, you know, blonde hair, right? This one is actually legitimate red hair. So, blonde hair versus red hair. So that's why this one has to stay, because you could say, well, that is a legitimate variant compared to the others. But I make the argument with Jesse Ventura all the time. Where were these figures produced? Korea, Japan, China, India, Canada, Germany, United States, Mexico. Anywhere in the world. Where were the factories? I mean, I don't know different paint colors or different colors in general, so I'm going to make up a couple of colors and just pretend that these are makeshift colors. Let's say this was passion pink. Again, I don't know if these colors exist. I'm just making it up. Just bear with me. Let's say this was passion pink, and let's say this was grapefruit pink. In Mexico, they use passion pink, and in Germany, they use grapefruit pink. Okay, different locations, different factories, using pink, but they use different shades of pink. That is it. Legitimate variants? Not really. Stipulation. Paint the pants pink. Check. Paint the hair blonde. It's blonde. I mean, it's a dirty blonde. It's blonde nonetheless. I mean, it's been 40 years, right? So, Maybe it just darkened over time. Maybe it's got sun damage. I don't know. But that's what I'm talking about. It's really hard. Are they legitimate variants, or is it just, hey, they come from different factories and they just use different coloring? So, as collectors, it's frustrating because you really can't say for sure, right? Now, when we look at Corporal Kirchner, or if we look at Jimmy Hart, I love these type of guys because they are so easy to tell the difference between, because yes, 100%, they are legitimate variants, and you could say, of course, pick them up. They're legitimate variants. But stuff like that, it's just too hard to tell. But you want to get them because, hey, you're a collector. You want to keep growing, keep expanding your collection. So why not? And for these type of videos, it's nice to have them nonetheless. So Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart has 3 legitimate variants. Starting off with which might actually be the most rare of the 3 Jimmy Harts, which is Jimmy Hart with absolutely 0 hearts on the megaphone. Yes, again, here we go again. Absolutely no extra graphical detail on the megaphone, and yet that's probably more rare and more expensive. You would think more graphics equals more value, but that's not always the case. Probably second most rare, second most valuable. Jimmy Hart with some hearts on the megaphone. Only hearts he doesn't have is the one that's in the middle, right? And finally, Jimmy Hart with all hearts on the megaphone, which I think is the most common. And if this isn't the most common, maybe the one with partial hearts is most common. I don't know, but I think this is the most common. You know, fantastic figure. So, awesome variant. Cool. Series 3 continues with 2 out of 3 Macho Mans that I'm aware of. I say 2 out of 3 because there is a third one that has a Macho Man with no stars on the trunks. Is there additional Macho Mans out there? Potentially. But that Macho Man with no stars on the trunks, God, I want that variant. Unfortunately, how often are you going to come across something like that? You can get a customizer to paint you something, but I want something that's real. I want a legitimate no stars on trunks Macho. If it comes up, what are you willing to pay for it? 50 bucks? 75? 100? You offer someone 100 bucks for it. Are they willing to take it? I don't know. But original Series 3, most common is Macho Man with pink trunks and stars, right? Most common Series 3 figure. You also have Macho Man with dark purple. Now, here's the thing. The dark purple could be a Series 3 variant, but this is also the same exact color scheme that they utilize for a Series 6 Black Card re-release. So, what you have here could be a Series 3 variant, or it could be a Series 6 re-release. So, technically, this could be a more valuable, expensive figure. It kind of falls in line the same way when I talk about Hasbro Bret Hart mailways. When I talk about the Hasbro mailway Bret Hart, in baggy Bret Hart mailaway Series 4 Bret with purple heart on the shirt. In baggy, it's a $1,200 figure. once you take it out of that bag, you can film it inside the bag, cut it open, have it on tape, have it on film, put it on eBay or something. Be like, hey, I'm filming a perfectly 100% mint Bret Hart mail away. Try to sell it for $1,000, $800, whatever. No. At that point, it's no longer a Bret Hart mail away. At that point, it is nothing more than a variant Series 4 Purple Heart Bret Hart. It is more valuable than a Pink Heart Bret Hart Series 4 Hasbro, which is basically a $20 to $40 figure based on condition. But it is not a $1,200 figure. It's maybe a $60 to $80 figure at that point, right? But people think that that a mailway just because it's a Purple Heart, no, right? So I think the same thing applies to a dark purple trunks Macho Man. This could be a Series 6 re-release Macho Man, right? But once you take him off the card, how do you prove that this is a Series 6 Macho Man? You can't. So when I look at this, I can't say that it's a Series 6. So when I look at it, he is nothing more than a Series 3 variant. And in fact, my eyes are garbage, so I can't even see the year on this. But if I have to get a magnifying glass to actually look at the year, he might be a Series 3. And I'm almost positive he is a Series 3. But for sake of argument, because I can't see the year, I'm going to say it is a Series 3 regardless. But this does come out, the exact same color scheme does come out on Blackheart as well. That is the argument I'm trying to make for this particular figure. All right. More prototypes. On the back of the carding of your LJNs, you got a Ricky Steamboat with red pants. Now, this would have been preferable to what you actually got released in LJN Series 3, because at the very least, you got this beautiful alternate color scheme to Ricky Steamboat. Now, Ricky Steamboat is probably a top 11, top 12 worst LJN figure already. Terrible design. He is nothing more than a rake across the back figure. I mean, when I look at him, right, his finisher to me, grabs you by the top of the head, plants you face first into the mat. That's his finisher. Terrible. Like, I can't see how kids wrestle with this. But no, man. But seriously though, not one of my favorites. Not a good piece. Even though he's a jumper, Hasbro, awesome figure. This one, not so much. But at least the dual colors offset and make it a fine piece, if this is what they would have actually come out with. Unfortunately, this is what LJN released. I get it. Ninja, right? They wanted that whole karate look. But, you know, black shoes, black pants, very simple, very plain. I love the Greg Valentine figure. It's like one of the top 10 greatest LJN figures of all time. But what hurts Greg Valentine is that he's a black shoes, black trunks figure. It is such a plain, simple figure. If it wasn't for the pose, what else does that figure have to offer? Bad pose. A nearly unplayable figure. If he had an awesome design, it would have really helped. But with no aesthetic to the figure, it doesn't have anything to offer. So that dual color would have really helped make it pop a lot more. And this, no, it doesn't do anything for the figure itself. So, and of course, I wasn't, I wasn't old enough to follow wrestling in the 80s, so I really wasn't, obviously, a Steamboat fan. And in the 90s, the real Dragon to me, this was my dragon, so... And I only knew him for a very short period of time, so... If I was actually old enough to actually be able to follow wrestling a few years earlier, I probably would have absolutely loved this guy. But unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to really watch him. Not really. So, and like I said, if I was born a few years earlier and had LJNs, I probably would have used the hell out of this. And I probably would have loved it. But looking at it from a fan standpoint, it just doesn't do anything for me. So, that is the Ricky Steamboat figures, prototype, and the original release. Oh, I skipped this one. This one should have been next. After Macho Man should have been Don Muraco. So, I think in the last magazine review, was it this past review or the week before? I think it was this past Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. We actually saw a Don Muraco picture. I think it was this past week. And I kind of pointed out where Don Muraco had yellow lettering on his t-shirt, right? And that actually was the original design for Don Muraco. But we didn't get yellow lettering for Don Muraco. And that's fine. But what we did get was two different variations of Don Muraco. One where Don Muraco has extremely large lettering on his shirt. And the other where the lettering is much smaller. Also notate that he had no socks and red knee pads, so that was, you know, different to what was actually released as well. So, large lettering versus small lettering, and I think the large lettering here is the more common of the two figures. But regardless of which one that you pick up, I mean, these are basically $20, $25 figures, you know, based on condition. Probably go about as high as $45 figures. I mean, it's a good value, you know, value-based figure. You know, good investment-wise. Not the best play pose in the world, but it holds value in my opinion. So, Don Muraco. Next up, possibly the greatest LJN figure ever made. Potentially. SD Jones. And I keep talking about it all the time when I bring up SD. He is one of my all-time favorite characters. At least one of my favorite figures to talk about. Too young. I didn't watch SD Jones. Didn't know anything about him. First time I ever heard his name is when I started collecting LJN figures. But I always get so excited whenever I get the opportunity to bring up the figures because they are so amazing. A few years ago when I did my top 10 countdown, I listed SD Jones as my number 10 favorite figure. But realistically, man, whenever I like kind of goof off, right, and I just pick up figures, right, I'm just like, I'm not like, you know, I'm just kind of like, just kind of like, you know, doing that, just being stupid, right? SD Jones is like the one figure I always kind of pick up and just kind of mess with because I just kind of like getting guys in like choke slams and whatnot, and you know, they just got like perfect body slam pose and just you sit there and punch. It's just a lot of fun to like, the grip is good, you know, play pose, choke slam, just so much fun to work with these. So, SD Jones is not a number 10 best figure. But when I look at the different LJNs, I look around and I'm like, all of these figures, they have, each one holds a special meaning for different reasons. You know, I like the Big John Stud because his pose reminds me of Sid Vicious Galoob, my George Washington of wrestling figures. And he's got that heaviness, that bulkiness, that weight to it. Big Boss Man has weight, has the bended knees that I love, the fighting pose, the aesthetic, the eye-popping colors, the accessory, name recognition. Hulk Hogan has a perfect fighting pose, name recognition, favorite wrestler, but he's also super slim, so can I really put him at number 1? SD Jones has a choke slam that not any other figure really has. Kamala has the bended knee and the perfect Hulk Hogan type fighting pose. And the bulk and weight. So it's like so difficult. Is it Stud? Is it Hogan Series 1? Is it Kamala? Is it Bossman? Is it SD Jones? I think any one of those, what did I say, 5 figures? I think any one of them could technically be number 1. But when I look at SD Jones, you know, whether you're talking Vince Sr. or Vince Jr., you knew this man made a difference in the wrestling world, and he absolutely had the love and admiration of those two guys because wasn't even a huge superstar. He was your enhancement talent, your jobber type, but he got 2 figures from the line. 2. Tito Santana, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. I think that was it. 3 guys in the line had, or the referee, if you want to include them. Those were the only guys that got multiple figures from LJN. SD Jones got multiple figures from LJN. That's how much they love this guy. So, I think most people have the belief that the red shirt SD Jones is the first action figure that was released. Probably because he looks like the most simple, the most plain of the two. You know, the least color, right? But the one thing that we always point out is the yellow headband, which obviously mimics the yellow t-shirt. So, it would be... And during that interview, I don't think the designer, I don't think he even knew which one came first. And I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, I'm trying to think back to that interview. I don't think he remembered which one came first. Like, I look at these 2 figures, and I always thought that this would have been the first one. But it couldn't have been. My assumption now is maybe that this would have been like the first design with the yellow headband, right? And maybe at some point, maybe they ran out of color or something. But I would assume that they would have been utilizing more than one factory. There would have been multiple factories doing this, right? Did multiple factories run out of yellow paint? Or did they say, hey, it was too much cost to use that much yellow, and we wanted to simplify things and maybe just use red across the board? I don't know. It's crazy to think about this. Instead of having all this extra, blue and green, maybe just use one flat color. Keep costs down. Did the World Wrestling Federation, they probably weren't billionaires in the 1980s, but the company had to probably be worth tens of millions of dollars at that point. Did they really cheap out? And they had to be making buck off of their toy line. But SD Jones is your next set of variants. And one of the most odd variants is Terry Funk. So your most common Terry Funk is your closed mouth Terry Funk, right? Simple. And then your open mouth Terry Funk. Alright. I'm going to go a little bit faster, guys, because we're already at an hour. And I think because my phone only has like an hour and 20 minutes to use, I just don't want to run out and have this time lost. The next prototype is Tito Santana. Original design of Tito Santana. They ended up using this design for Bret Hart in Series 4, so it's kind of funny. But this was the original design of Tito Santana. And they ended up coming out with this garbage. Oh my god, this is like the worst action figure ever. If it wasn't for Jimmy Snuka and possibly Rick Rude in Series 6, this would be like the worst action figure of the entire LJN line. Oh god, it's so bad. At least this was serviceable. This would have been a fine figure. Not the best, but this would have been okay. XOX Customs by Random Treasures. If you want one of your own, your own prototype, good color, hard rubber, you know, much better play pose. So I like this one a whole lot. So this one was actually worth it. And then the Killer Bees. B. Brian Blair with original look. Which comes with, of course, the Bumblebee look, the stripes. And then the most rare figure is just plain yellow trunks. And if you can find one on eBay, auction, buy it now, you're probably going to be looking somewhere in the $200 plus range. Super rare figure. One of the most rare, but man, this was a necessity for the collection. And then the Hart Foundation, both purple pants and pink pants variants. Yeah, sorry I have to shoot through this, guys, but like I said, I didn't expect to spend so much time on the other figures. Jim Neidhart, pink pants, purple pants. Yeah, don't need to see those. And of course, Jake Roberts. Original design is Jake Roberts, of course, with snakes. And then one of the most rare figures is Jake Roberts that comes without snakes on the pants. So kind of like Macho Man doesn't have any stars on his trunks, Jake Roberts doesn't have snakes on the pants, or B. Brian Blair doesn't have stripes on his trunks, etc. All right. Elizabeth, gold skirt, gold skirt and purple skirt. Now, purple skirt here is a custom, but if you guys want to see the purple skirt, you can see my MOC figure, that's fine. Purple skirt just looks just like this, except it's purple. That's fine. And in fact, that is Elizabeth, purple skirt. So, all right. So I am going to show the Koko B. Ware right here, because I want to insert a clip of the original design of Koko B. Ware that comes with blue pants. Now there's also an Outback Jack, but I'm probably not going to include that one. That's fine. That Koko B. Ware, that was Series 5. Sticking with Series 5, Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, original design. Right. And of course, the one of one Vince McMahon. Basically, LJN, they gave Vince McMahon his own personal custom figure that he would have displayed on his desk in his office. And I think I was told that there was also like in a spread of like some kind of cigar magazine or something. So that was pretty awesome to hear. I'm pretty sure that figure is probably vaulted now. that original is probably worth tens of thousands, if not more, nowadays. But yeah. So I still refer to the prototype as a one of one type. Now, for Series 5, the original design for Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan with blue shirt. Last week or a week and a half ago, I got 3 new figures in from Ram Treasures. I specifically sent in a couple requests, right, for new prototypes, and one of the designs I inquired about was the blue shirt, and Net was able to fulfill my request, and this was important to get this prototype in. Now, during my reviews of, the El Gigante and Tugboat, I mentioned that I wanted to not do a specific one-off video for Ram Treasures, that I wanted to hold off until I got to this video to kind of reflect on this particular figure, because I wanted to talk about this piece for this particular video, and she did an absolutely amazing job, guys. Like I said, I've got a ton of Series 5 Hulk Hogan customs and whatnot, but this right here, this prototype was necessary. When you look at WWF the magazine, or not WWF the magazine, but when you look at the different, like, the wrestling figure database, or actually it might have been in WWF the magazine as well. If you actually flip through the earlier, when did it come out? Yeah, 1988. I think I actually saw it in one of my review videos for WWF the magazine, and one of the 1988 issues. Probably a couple of the 1988 issues. So, like I said, it's like it shows Hulk Hogan inside of like a steel cage. And I've actually put it on my Facebook page. I put it on my YouTube community notes several times. Different pictures and whatnot. Live action pictures showing him in this outfit. So, one of the original prototypes depicts Hulk Hogan with this particular look. And I think this would have been absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong. The white shirt and red shirt that LJN eventually came out with was incredible. But this is so dynamic, and it's so good that it hurts that you didn't get the opportunity to get this piece as well. Maybe if they had skipped putting out that white shirt and red shirt all over again in Series 6 Black Card, and maybe put out this one instead in Series 6, maybe that would have been better. It would have gave fans something different to look out for. But just look at this. And I really want to give Net a real shout out for getting this piece out. Not for getting it out for me, for creating this, but look at the art and detail that really went into creating this. Forgetting the decal and the paint and detail that went into this. Absolutely, truly, absolutely phenomenal, man. So she has the decals and artwork. So if you guys want to get on XOX Customs by Ram Treasures on Etsy and get yourself a Hulk Hogan Series 5 prototype, I highly recommend it. Again, thank you 10. You know, put in that discount code, save yourself 10%, and get your figure for around 125, 130 bucks. You know, free shipping. So it's definitely worth it to get this prototype. I mean, look at the rubber. Even the rubber is standalone, flawless. Okay, it freaking bleeds in beautifully. But the Series 5 1988 release with white shirt and red shirt Hogan. And of course, both figures were re-released on black card in 1989. It's funny though, Hulk Hogan, when he was released in black card with red shirt, he wasn't released with a championship belt, but he was released with a championship belt on blue card with the red shirt, which was so odd. But white shirt, when he was released on both blue and black card, he was released with the championship both times. So that's, you know, different. But all right. So your 3 Hulk Hogans. And you know what? All right. So yeah, we're good. That's Series 5. Continuing on with Series 5. Your 2 variants of the referee. I said it before. In 1988, Ted DiBiase paid off Earl Hebner. They locked Dave Hebner in a closet. And Earl Hebner ref the match between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And Andre defeated the Hulkster and became new champion, right? So, 1988. When were these figures released? Series 5, 1988. They look identical. Dave and Earl Hebner were twins. Why couldn't these be Dave and Earl Hebner? Instead of just calling these 2 generic referees, why can't we classify these as the Hebner twins? I mean, they may not look like the Hebners in real life, but I mean, it's still fun to kind of to think of them as the Hebners, regardless. But in '88, you did get 2 generic referees, and you know me, if I was a kid, nope, these would not be 2 generic referees. These would be 2 wrestlers. And the referee would be their gimmick. Oh yeah, you know me, as a kid, I would wrestle the hell out of these because they have a perfect playable wrestling pose. I would use the heck out of these. And they are fantastic. 2 more variants for the LJN collection. In Series 6, the LJN Grand Toys, they came out with a prototype of a particular character for King Haku. It was supposed to be a King Haku with crown that was advertised. Unfortunately, when they finally released the figure on black card, what they gave you was not a King Haku, but an Islander Haku. Islander Haku, no crown, and still kept the stupid pose, the same thing that was in his poster for the black card with the whole, you know, crown and with the crown and robe and everything. And terrible, like I said, top 10 worst LJN, but this was the last prototype, at least one of the last prototypes I have right currently. So prototype with original release, King Haku versus Islander Haku. And a crown. All right. Just kind of look everything over, make sure that I did not miss any figures that are laying here. And I think I got everything. All right, so that should be all for now, guys. This is my last LJN video. Next week, we will start Series 1 of the AWA Remcos. And we're going to look at all 5 series, and then we're going to move on to the belt. We're going to do thumb wrestlers, and, well, what I do have, but I'm going to try and buy more as we go on, and the rings. So that should probably take about 6 weeks. Maybe I can stretch it out to 7 if I acquire more, but I'm probably looking at least 6 weeks worth of AWA Remcos. After that, we're going to do at least 3 weeks worth of WCW Galoobs, and maybe that brings the Tuesday shows to an end. We shall see. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all in the comments, and see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody.